Yeah, that started.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending from where you are joining this this webinar. My name is Flaubert Mbiekop. I am a senior program specialist with Canada's International Development Research Center. I am based in Dakar, where we have our regional office for West and Central Africa. This webinar is part of a series organized by UNU Vice Rectorate in Europe in collaboration with IDRC and many other partners. And this is part of an initiative which started easily 2 years ago in response for calls to support exploration and development of structures and mechanisms that would facilitate innovation and the development of solutions by startups across Africa in a way that attract funding and absorb large capital, thus going beyond early stage green startups and growing into mature green innovation enterprises. This initiative is implemented by UNU Vice Rectorate in Europe under the leadership of Eric Tambo. And today we are very pleased to have a panel of very distinguished speakers who will help us understand some of the challenges that women are facing when it comes to green innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa, and some of the solutions or their contribution to addressing those challenges. But before that, we'll have a presentation of a report that was prepared as part of this initiative, a presentation that will be made by Nambula, who is the executive director of WEAC, which is a women's entrepreneurship center. Nambula focuses on addressing gender barriers in entrepreneurship, increasing women's access to economically empowering tools and resources, and supporting their transition from the informal to the formal sector. She has more than 12 years of experience and has worked extensively within the Zambian entrepreneurial ecosystem. But before we give the floor to Nambula, I would like all the participants to keep typing their questions into the chat, and later on, well, actually into the Q&A, and later on, we'll make sure to channel those questions to the speakers. We'll have 2 rounds of questions and answers with the speakers before opening the floor for questions and answers. Without further ado, let me invite Nambula to present to us the findings that are included in this very insightful report on some of the specific challenges that women entrepreneurs and innovators are facing across Africa. Nambula, are you ready to take the floor?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Flaubert. I think we can have the presentation come on. Great. All right, so I'll just dive right into it. Hello, everyone, and greetings from Lusaka, Zambia. It's always a pleasure sharing insights coming out of this research, analyzing gender dimension in green innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. And today I will be presenting some of the key highlights, in particular alluding to some of the aspects around the different stages of business formation and onto other cycles of the business, but also looking at how different actors within the ecosystem play a supportive role in enabling the entrepreneurship and business journeys of green entrepreneurs in Africa. So we'll dive deep into the landscape, first of all, understanding who is doing what across the business journeys. We'll also look at remaining gaps and opportunities that we see. What are some of the emerging issues? Where are the opportunities? And where are the gaps that still need to be addressed? And lastly, I'll also look at recommendations coming out of the report to address these challenges. Right. There are various aspects that we look at when analyzing gender dimensions in green entrepreneurship and innovation in Africa. It is well known, for example, that women entrepreneurs in the green innovation sector are actually at the forefront of driving a positive change in sustainable industries. They are starting businesses. They are providing insights around where opportunities are and where barriers are. So they are undoubtedly playing a very significant role. But we also do understand that they encounter barriers ranging from access to markets, to finance, cultural biases, as well as policy limitations. And in green sectors, we also know that the women entrepreneurs in this sector have very specific barriers that they face in comparison to entrepreneurs generally. And so the report itself surfaces some of those areas and bottlenecks that actually disempower women entrepreneurs in the sector from transitioning through the different phases of their business journeys, as well as the various cycles. Some of the statistics that might surprise you include the fact that currently 54% of entrepreneur support organizations dedicated to nurturing green sector entrepreneurs are based in Africa. And out of these, we are seeing a significant number, a percentage of 51% coming out of Kenya, 43% being headquartered in Europe and the United States, and only 3% in other African nations. This should be actually a bit of a surprise to most of you. But we also know that there are various aspects that encompass the business life cycle of a green entrepreneur or an innovator in Africa. The next slide, please. And I would like us to look at very briefly some of the different stages that may arise out of starting and building a business in the green sector. So we have what we call the business formation stage, the early stage, startup stage, conceptualization stage of a business. Then we also have the business validation stage, which basically alludes to a business that is establishing at least the minimum viable product that will enable the business to go to market, getting a proof of concept, and basically just getting validation around issues of access to market and other aspects of product development. Then we also have the business growth stage. And finally, well, although this is not mentioned, there's a fourth stage actually that is also being critically analyzed, which is the profitable exit stage. Although this is still quite very immature, but we do have green businesses in Africa that are, leading towards profitable exit. But I'd also like to mention that sometimes you may experience changes in the cycle of these different business stages. And some businesses have a tendency of falling back from one stage of the business to the other, depending on the specific subsector in the green innovations but also very specific to the kind of business operating environment that they're in. You'll find that formalization stage will encompass cycles such as conceptualization, business formalization, and some businesses actually may not necessarily formalize at the first stage, but will engage in formalization at business validation and MVP stage. So there are different dynamics, and some of these dynamics also affect women green entrepreneurs differently. So we now go on to looking at what this means in terms of the different supportive mechanisms that are available to enable or to facilitate business journeys. So we have a whole spectrum of business support mechanisms ranging from development organizations, funders, academia, incubators and accelerators, as well as policymakers. And each of these key actors play a significant role. To some extent, some of the roles that they play are similar and others are very specific, dependent on what their objectives are and what their interest of supporting green entrepreneurs specifically is. So for example, with development organizations, you find that at the early stage of formation, there are opportunities for them to provide various resources, including programs, early stage grants, startup loans, microfinance. And an example of this would be the UNDP that is currently running quite a number of incubation and accelerator programs across the continent. Here in Zambia, they do actually have a lab that is established on the Copper Belt, which is supporting prototyping for early stage businesses in the green sector. When you look at the funders that are available to provide a supportive mechanism in the early stage, you find that there's been quite a few changes. Initially, we were not seeing so much funding being talked about at early stage of a business, and this is where you'd find most entrepreneurs actually start using very organic penetration methods. They raise their own money, they start very small, but suddenly we've also seen a lot of interest from funders going to supporting early stage businesses. And they could also come in with things like mentorship, industry connections. And an example of this is the Africa Trust Group that actually provides pre-seed funding to early stage green entrepreneurs. We also see a lot of movement coming from academia in a number of African countries on the continent. Actually, we've seen universities and research organizations paying very specific attention to supporting business conceptualization in early stage. An example of this would be one of the programs that our organization, WIAC, was running with the Southern African Innovation Support Program and SunBio, called the FemBioBiz program. So through this program, we were able to work with universities to identify green interventions of young female entrepreneurs who are in universities, who are trying to take their ideas from the lab and into the market. And as you know, scientists are most of the times not business people. So they will focus on building the product in the lab, but they won't think about how do we take this product to market? What are some of the dynamics that might advantage our market penetration, and so on and so forth. We also see focused support coming from institutions like the Stellenbosch University and University of Nairobi. And again, more resources can be accessed to understand more specifically how they're providing this support. Incubators and accelerators are very famous for providing early stage support through co-working spaces that offer office infrastructure. They also support through customized labs, prototyping facilities. And an example would be, for example, the Future Females Tech Hub, that WIAC also has been involved in, basically supporting that conceptualization stage of a business, which is very, very critical. Another very key actor is the policy framework. supporting early stage green formalization or formation rather. So we see governments through their different departments and ministries, and depending on their mandate, coming on board to support interventions that lead to creation of an enabling environment. We've seen a number of countries in Africa embark on developing the startup bill, for example, which has done quite significantly well. I know countries like Egypt, Kenya have embarked on that roadmap successfully. Zambia is also in discussions with the support of development partners to develop the startup bill. So what does this mean, for example, to green entrepreneurship and innovation? It means that there's specific attention being paid in terms of, first of all, defining businesses in early stage green innovations, because there's currently a tendency to confuse who an early stage business is, what does the business formation journey look like for early stage entrepreneurs. So the startup bill ultimately will lead to ensuring that all the different key players are thinking critically about how they can be part of developing a supportive to enable the startup process. Moving on to the validation stage, we're also seeing quite a few significant movements there. The validation stage is such a critical stage for green entrepreneurs, because this is what determines how a product goes to market. It's a stage where entrepreneurs are looking for feedback. They're also looking to achieve commercial viability of their product. And it's a very difficult stage. We see this cycle taking longer most of the time than usual, because there's a lot of iteration, a lot of back and forth, but also it's a stage where they need to prove that this is a product that will respond to twofold aspects, being commercial viability, but also environmental response, sustainability, and so on and so forth. So thankfully, we are seeing a lot of focus from development organizations that are creating targeted assistance to help refine business models, validate their products or services, and prepare them for market entry. An example is the African Development Bank. In the last 5 years, they've issued quite a number of calls for application from incubators to see how they could create a very customized infrastructure to support business validation stage for green entrepreneurs. Funders are also really looking from different angles. We are seeing climate investment funds at this stage. There's also now some relatively positive movement in terms of coming in with security funds, for example. So funders are now looking critically about how to redefine risk at MVP stage, at validation stage, because this is a stage where the risk aspect of green entrepreneurs can properly be constructed. And most funders do understand that it's within their interest to ensure that there's proper definition of commercial returns and viability, but at the same time paying specific attention to impact return. We see, and then again, academia coming in, offering resources, expertise, access to networks. Incubators are also supporting business validation through programs such as the product iteration support, access to investor networks, and there are many examples showing how most incubators across the continent are supporting the MVP stage of most green businesses. Policymakers, again, very significant amount of interest going to enabling the environment for validation. Lastly, we have the growth stage. And like I mentioned before, the way businesses progress through these stages may differ, but more specifically, women green innovators and entrepreneurs may face different experiences in going through these different stages of business. Specifically, they face a number of challenges that cut across, for example, when you talk about green regulation, we are only now just seeing a lot of regulators at the intersection of supporting business growth. There's not been a clear understanding, for example, of what sort of regulation, standardization, and licensing should occur at what stage of a business. And because this is unclear, you find that there's a lot of overlaps in terms of, for example, if you have a green tech product. So the entrepreneur that's developing that product is at the intersection of regulation from the technology regulator or company, and also, on the other hand, a green regulation or financing framework. So if these two entities are not speaking to each other, it takes longer for them to pass the MVP stage and go to market as quickly as possible, but also to attempt scalability. And so this is where sometimes the confusion is. But we've also seen opportunity in terms of how the different actors are now supporting different aspects of an enabling framework at the business growth stage, because this is an area of interest for most of the actors, including development organizations, the funders, academia, incubators, and policymakers. So the policymakers are looking at facilitating collaboration with stakeholders. An example is the South African government, through collaborative process, released a report on the empowerment of women in green industry policy assessment. And this is really, really critical to assuring that the other different actors do actually understand what does it mean. Every stakeholder understand what it means to play their role and engage in that collaborative. Next slide, please. So I will also very quickly highlight some of the gaps and opportunities that we are seeing, of course, with regards to ecosystem players and also the different stages of business journeys, cycles. You will notice that there are sector-specific gaps, but also sub-sector specific gaps. For example, when you go down to connecting sectors in green, which include, for example, water and sanitation, green infrastructure, the blue economy, you find that the higher the value chain that women green entrepreneurs venture into, the more technical it becomes for them. The less access to specialization, because there are few people, for example, mentors and coaches that are specialized in industry. So it becomes a little bit complicated. But it also kind of, screens out those that are operating at the lower level of the value chain, because the profits are more as you go higher. It becomes technical, but you also encounter higher profit margins. There's also more product validation there, which enables you to venture successfully and expand your market. So these are the gaps that we are seeing. There's less support. There's less access to technical expertise and industry knowledge and things like that in specific subsectors. Lack of disaggregated funding support for women in the later stage of business growth is also another key gap. And also this alludes to the fact that across the different stages of business growth, every funder or capital provider is waiting, first of all, to see some level of product success in the market. They're waiting for the risk to go down a little bit, but they're not willing to invest in early stage, support. Everybody is expecting someone else to de-risk green entrepreneurs and then come in at a point where they have a full product that presents commercial viability. And because there's lack of information around data, which really disaggregates how women green entrepreneurs are performing at different stages and in different subsectors, it becomes a huge gap and a huge loss. But I'll also very quickly highlight funding on other aspects, including funding, capacity development, role modeling. We are seeing a lot of opportunities now with a lot of focus on from capital providers, for example, looking at or being interested at different levels of business, which we were not seeing a bit more than 5 years ago. So there's now increased pre-seed financing, more innovative financing mechanisms. We are looking at things like blended finance and things like that, which becomes more available at the growth stage of the business. Capacity development as well. We see a lot of development organizations coming in to provide technical assistance funding, whether it's to tech hubs, incubators, universities, really harnessing the collaborative efforts to ensure that there's capacity which is being built across the board. And also role modeling. I think we're now seeing bigger pipeline of role model female entrepreneurs who venture into the green industry. Next slide, please. Recommendations. I will quickly go through recommendations in the interest of time, just to share and highlight some of the recommendations coming out of the report with regards to various aspects of support around different stages of businesses. Access to finance, for example. The report does surface recommendations around opportunities for women entrepreneurs in the green sector, enhanced through strategies such as increased pre-seed financing to support the formation and validation, creation of more innovative financing mechanisms that are better suited to the context and cultures of women in the sector. That is another recommendation. So you see the target could be banks, MFIs, development finance providers, and so on and so forth. And again, this cuts across the different stages from seed to growth to mature, and so on, back and forth. Next slide, please. Right. So we also have issues, recommendations around the policy and regulation. Addressing policy and institutional barriers requires a coordinated effort from governments, policymakers, institutions, and civil society organizations. And of course, this involves creating an enabling policy environment and also being intentional about what kind of policies will support early stage businesses, growth stage businesses, and also businesses that are looking to internationalize, because there's also a tendency to formulate policies, but with most of the times assuming that businesses will only operate locally. But when it comes to supporting internationalization of these businesses, helping them to move across borders and perform and operate in other markets, policies do not enable them to be able to do that successfully. Promoting gender responsive programs and initiatives, enhancing institutional support systems, and also fostering a culture of gender equality and inclusivity in the green innovation sector are some of the recommendations that have been put forward. Next slide, please. Interesting also, we have cultural and societal barriers, which are hampering or rather disempowering women in green innovations to move to consequent stages of business. And cultural barriers are huge. We are experiencing this at different forefronts And so there's need for increased visibility, for example, and recognition of women's achievements in the sector through media. So how we tell the story, how we communicate will ultimately have an impact on how many more female entrepreneurs venture into the green sector. And so there's need to collaborate with other entities such as media and organizations that are at the forefront in advocating for different aspects of support towards green entrepreneurship. Additionally, policy interventions that promote gender equality and address discrimination practices can also play a significant role in overcoming some of these cultural barriers. And again, this cuts across different business stages. Next slide. So thank you very much for now. I hope this presentation has been good enough to trigger discussions for the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nambula. It was really very clear and really to the point, very insightful as well. Thank you for setting the stage for this discussion. The first panelist that I will invite to share some insight here is Kanika. Kanika, who is a director at Intellicap. Kanika has almost 20 years of experience. And as a development finance expert, she's been designing and scaling market-led solutions for solving social and development challenges in emerging economies. She has supported more than 500 innovative enterprises and impact-focused organizations across various regions. And she has worked with many donors and international organizations from IFC to the World Bank, IDSC, FCDO, you name it. So Kanika, please, can you tell us, you heard like some of the challenges that Nambula highlighted in her presentation. Can you tell us what is that you are doing or what is that Intellicap is doing to help address some of those challenges?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Flaubert, and thanks a lot, Nambula, for that presentation and set the stage for this discussion and this panel. So I'll give you a bit of a background on Intellicap and the origination of the Intellicap, and then come to the point of what we are currently doing for it to make to give a context and make sense. So Intellicap, we are about almost 20 plus year old organization, and the whole vision of the organization with which it was started was that there are a lot of challenges in the emerging economies in the global south, be it in Asia or be it in Africa. And those challenges before, when we started working into a lot of those times that have been focused, the way the challenges were solved were very localized in a way, like very small scale and not sustainable in way, and entrepreneurship or the businesses were not focus of solving those challenges. Then when we realized that these the problems occur in the local context, and the solutions also have to come from the local context in a more entrepreneurship-led way. And that's how the organization was started to support the businesses across the global south to create the solution. So that means ideate the solutions and then support in their journey to grow and scale their solutions within their regions, within their cities, within their countries, and then even take that solutions to the other parts of the world. So in the and the ethos was that the global south problems need a global south solution, and then the entrepreneurs who have lived those problems are the best people to solve those solutions and create the businesses around it. But then we realized that these businesses actually face a lot of challenges, as Nambula has mentioned, to grow and scale. They need advisory support, they need capital support, and they also need to meet the other partners that they can collaborate to grow and scale their businesses. And that's how we started the organization or the group. to create an enabling ecosystem for these sustainable and inclusive businesses that are particularly focusing on the underserved and the marginalized people, as all we call as the low income communities, and support them by providing advisory support or capital support or networking support. So far, through the group, we have channelized about $4.2 billion of capital in these type of businesses, and these businesses, and then further on grown and raise more capital and scale their businesses, have supported, as Flaubert mentioned, businesses, almost like 2,000 plus businesses across the global south in their journey to scale. And then also sort of providing them networking support through our platform, which is called as a Sankalp Forum, which we do every year in Asia and Africa. And then coming specifically to your question, Flaubert, on that, what we have been currently in the past few years we have been doing. So we focused on building the ecosystem, as I mentioned. So in that context, I am based in here in Nairobi, Kenya. In the last 6 to 7 years, our focus has been a lot in that how the business or the startup ecosystem become the point of discussion, how to get the international funders and the financiers create the solutions that are suitable for that. So in that context, we have been creating the solutions, implementing the solutions across the space of ranging from the clean energy to water and healthcare and sanitation services, women economic empowerment, so women entrepreneurs as well, and circular economy, creating these solutions, supporting these solutions, and assisting them to grow and scale. I'll take a pause and hand it back to you, Flaubert, so that I can elaborate later further.
Thank you so much, Kanika. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely get back to you, especially on the issue of financing. Maybe we can now give the floor to Elizabeth. As you heard from the presentation, one of the challenges, or one thing that we see when it comes to green entrepreneurship in relation to the role that women can play in that space, is that the higher you go in the value chain, the more technical it becomes. So clearly, that means that unless we are able to make sure that women have the technical skills that are necessary to operate at a certain level, there might be some challenges for them in entering into the most paying segments of the green entrepreneurship ecosystem. And we are lucky to have Elizabeth here, who for more than 20 years have been working to, mainstream gender into science and science research, and also supporting some key donors like the European Commission. So Elizabeth, can you tell us what is that you've been doing, be it through the advice that you provide to some very strategic donors, or be it through the organization that you founded? What contribution have you been making to addressing these specific challenges?
Thank you, Flaubert. Thank you for this opportunity as well. So we're basically, my organization is focusing on gender equality in science enterprise. Okay, so that means in research, in innovation, and of course the markets for science knowledge. And we found that really to persuade high-level decision makers and policymakers, like in the European Commission or in OECD or in governments, it is important not just to talk about the problems, okay? We have to say that actually we have to translate the problems into opportunities. We have to demonstrate that actually investment in research and innovation has everywhere. There are opportunities to achieve gender equality benefits. I mean, we are fortunate that right now in Europe, or at least in the European Union, there is a drive to promote gender equality through financing. So there's a financing, multi-annual finance framework that actually has got specific method for analyzing all the programs and to see how well are they contributing to gender equality. So we hear investment also in green programs, energy transition, and so on. So we have a very important lever right now. It hasn't been like this for the last 20 years. It just happened over the last 10 years that there has been this progress and a high-level policy recognition that all the public money that is being spent on research and innovation projects have the responsibility to produce social progress and gender equality. So wasn't like this when I started, but I'm really happy that it is now. So we have been involved recently in projects such as analyzing gender balance in energy transition research and innovation, look at the demand for skills and supply of skills and where the women come into it. We are currently also in a European project called Genesis, which looks at the gender power relations in energy transition and what it means to achieve fair and just energy transition. So that looks at energy transition as a socio-technological innovation ecosystem. So it has to look at the policy, the government, governance, the environment, the cultures, and so on. And to bring out of this recommendations on how you do research for energy transition, how you do for a Green New Deal, how you translate this to innovation, how you can create the markets for such a science knowledge. And all of this involves bringing together different stakeholders. So our main function is to bring these different stakeholders and try to persuade them that there is enough evidence to show that achieving gender equality benefits is not difficult. It is just that people don't think about it and they don't really understand how they can do it, yes, because especially if they work in technology, but that technology is motivated by social contribution to social progress, then immediately gender has to play a role in that, yes. So we've been fortunate of being able to involve the Commission, the OECD, the UN Women, all those players who have a responsibility, but also the power to bring about change, but also looking at different ways how you can create markets for science knowledge, because that's a powerful incentive for policymakers to see that they can actually get some impact by investing in research. And there's some fantastic results, practices from Fraunhofer and everywhere else, where there's a concept of co-creation. It's very strong now in Europe, that you have to bring citizens into the process of making impact through research. And so it's not easy, but it definitely brings in so many different perspectives about why you're doing this research, who is going to benefit from this research. You are using public money, and so you have a societal responsibility. I can speak about this for a long time, but that's actually just some. This is a summary.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's really fantastic. I'll come back to you later. Maybe for now, I can invite Eubans. Eubans is an expert in the Article 6 and carbon pricing. He's actually with the Regional Collaboration Center of the UNFCCC for East Africa. And he supports outreach activities to develop a better understanding on the needs of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Eubans, the question I have for you is this one. Obviously, the UNFCCC is a major actor in, achieving the SDGs and especially the Paris Agreement. Can you tell us, when it comes to the issue that we are discussing here today, like the role of women in green innovation and entrepreneurship, what is that you guys are doing? What contribution are you bringing to the table? Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert, and also to my previous colleagues who spoke on the subject. As you said, we work with the Regional Collaboration Center for East and Southern Africa. We are based here in Kampala, and we oversee the implementation of the Article 6 and also the national determined contributions in the 19 countries in our region. And basically what we do, we are the foot soldiers, if I may use this term, of the UNFCCC. When it comes to operationalization of the Paris Agreement, we support both party and non-party stakeholders in the region to make them understand what are those things that they need to put in order to benefit from the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Maybe to just give it a context, we understand that under the Kyoto Protocol, we had projects and also programs of activities that were implementing clean development projects. And so with the transition now, upon the coming on board of the Paris Agreement in 2015, some of the projects that had certain characteristics as per the decisions are supposed to transition from the CDM to now the new Paris Agreement. So our role is to make sure that we provide this support. And in Glasgow, actually the UNFCCC and other instruments that the parties that have ratified the Paris Agreement allowed or gave mandate the UNFCCC to implement a capacity building program. This is a 5-year program, and it is in its 3rd year of implementation. So we are conducting both in-country support, whereby we identify countries and then we offer support technically and institutionally, but also we conduct a regional capacity building events, like for implementing carbon pricing for those countries that would want to see their emission levels reduced, and also for party stakeholders that would want to implement carbon projects in far as reducing emissions is concerned. Another level of support that also we offer to the entities I mentioned above regards to ensuring that the regulatory framework is implemented. What I mean here is that the UNFCCC, through its support structure, which is basically the Article 6.4 supervisory body, which oversees the operationalization of the Article 6.4 mechanism, has adopted standards and procedures, for example, for how to register a project. So it is our role as the RCC to bring this to the fore and make those parties and non-party stakeholders understand. It also pertains to issues of methodologies. So it is our role to make the stakeholders understand, such that when it is time for them to implement or register a project, at least they have where to start from. Another role also that UNFCCC plays is in terms of putting in place infrastructure. As you might be aware, the whole world now has been awashed with news of greenwashing, whereby certain stakeholders or entities claim to have, implemented projects that are, carbon credit worthy, but in the end, they are found to be, having issues to do with, for example, fraud, human rights abuses. So this infrastructure in terms of the registry helps to guard against this kind of malpractices, whereby you come with a project, it is validated by accredited entities, normally called designated operational entities that are accredited by the UNFCCC. And then this registry helps actually to track the unit that has been generated along the whole value chain up to the time it is either cancelled or it is retired. So this kind of infrastructure helps to avoid double counting, such that when I buy a carbon credit from a project that has been implemented, be it in cook stoves, be it in water purification, for example, or waste to energy, I'm sure that what I've bought is an authentic item that I can proudly, as a private sector entity, say, I have met my carbon neutral target, or I'm doing my corporate social responsibility in terms of giving back to the community by reducing the emissions that I generate as an entity along my production value chain. So I'll stop there for now and back to you, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eubans. I will definitely come back to you in the second round of questions. But maybe it's time to bring back Nambula. After that excellent presentation, she has some more insights to share with us. So Nambula, tell us, you actually operate a tech hub. Can you tell us what is that you are doing? You know, how are you contributing to addressing some of the issues that you highlighted? Please, in your response, can you say something about, that is a question that actually was posed in the Q&A there, whether there are specific programs, mentorship programs for African green entrepreneurs. And maybe a dimension I can add to that question. Sorry, it may sound very long, but it's not really. If you can also reflect on some of the management and operational strategies that other tech hub can borrow from you to better support women green innovators and entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much, Flopert. Well, just to give it a dive, we are basically operates as an enterprise support organization that basically focuses on enabling women entrepreneurs to transition from the informal sector to the formal sector. So most of the work that we do around green entrepreneurship is demand-driven. Over the years, our focus has been to establish, gender-sensitive business support mechanisms, but we also do realize that the need from women entrepreneurs comes from the angle of them starting up as necessity entrepreneurs or opportunity entrepreneurs. So that has gotten us to really reflect around how does our enterprise support fabric look like across the whole spectrum. And some of the things that we have embarked on have been to, first of all, position ourselves as a tech hub to be able to provide sector-specific support, which has required us building capacity in our own staff, for example, and also ensuring that we are subscribing to some of the global, not only local, but global standards that give us the stamp to be able to support female entrepreneurship, because in the green sector, because we also do realize that it's a very specialized sector. So the hub entirely has had to go through training as well. We've had to build our model to integrate aspects such as financial modeling for green businesses. And how does that look like? So we also do understand that most of the green entrepreneurs operate in resource-constrained markets. Some of them are sourcing their products from rural-based environments where it's hard to reach, very difficult. They're hampered by the lack of infrastructure and things like that. They have to spend months, days building loyalty relationships in communities so they can work with smallholder farmers successfully. They can work with cooperatives and gatekeepers as well. So we've had to think through what does that mean from a business support standpoint. And so this has enabled us to see things from a different angle and integrate a model that can easily reach the green business entrepreneurs, but also ensure that there's inclusion in our support mechanism. For example, currently in Zambia, we have a serious energy deficit, and we're also coming from a period of drought. So how do we ensure that our women entrepreneurs that are operating in these resource-constrained communities that are hampered by all these different environmental aspects, how do we build their capacity, for example, to negotiate for climate, to advocate for better and more resilient seed, but also position them better to use a market-based approach, because you find that with most of the support that is going into these areas, it's coming from, aspects such as, handouts, CSR strategies where corporates are giving into these communities, which is a good thing, but it's not sustainable long-term. So those are some of the aspects that we had to think about as a tech hub, but also really leveraging technology to ensure that the time that it takes for businesses to go to market is shorter. The time that it takes for them to develop products is shorter, but also efficient and sustainable. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nambula. What my main takeaway is the importance of keeping in mind the fact that we need to be strategic in the way we approach the specific constraints that women are facing. That's very insightful. Maybe I can go back to Kanika to speak specifically about the issue of financing. Obviously, like Nambula put it, we cannot rely indefinitely on a model that is mostly based on CSR. We need to move towards a model where it's more financing, meaning real business. So how can current financial funding models be adapted to better speak to the specific needs of women, green innovators, and entrepreneurs? And please, in your response, also touch on the issue, on the question that was raised in the chat as to whether there are specific mentorship programs for women, because that is something that Intelcap does a lot.
Thanks a lot, Flaubert, for that. Yeah, I think since, as mentioned previously by the other panelists as well, that the raising finance for women is even much more difficult. And then there comes the two categories. It's a woman and it is the green businesses. So then it becomes a double layered issue for the raising of the finance for that. Some of the work that we have been doing in this space is that the coming up and working with the financiers to develop the innovative financing structures with them, which ranges from structures which are more debt or working capital financing based and not just like the equity type of investments. But because a lot of businesses, the women and the women-owned green businesses, they are working, I'll say, at the micro or the SME space where they are requiring more flexible type of capital, which can assist them in the long-term basis. And as we all know, the businesses or the women payers are one of the best. They always repay, but it's just that they a lot of times do not have the collaterals that are required by the traditional financial institutions to give this financing. So coming up with the structure which are non-collateral based. So we have some of the financing facilities which are non-collateral based. And also what we have find is that a lot of these businesses, as Nambula also mentioned, are the necessity businesses or the micro and the nano businesses. So they require the small type of capital, small size of capital, which can be anywhere between even less than $1,000 or so. So, but as a financier, it doesn't make sense, or it is not financially viable for them to go to each and every business and provide financing at that particular size. And that's how the role of the intermediaries come into place, and also the role of the aggregation comes into place. So what we have been doing is like working with a lot of these women businesses and putting together in the groups, aggregating them so that then collectively they are able to raise the capital through these financing structures, which is suitable for them and suitable for the suppliers of the capital as well. And it make financial, otherwise, as you mentioned, Flaubert, that it needs to be sustainable on the long-term basis and not just the CSR basis. And if it needs to be sustainable, it needs to be sustainable for the financiers also, and not just the women businesses. And that's why the role of the aggregation comes into play. We're aggregating these women businesses, coming up with the structure so that they can do a pool borrowing through these financing structures. So one is non-collateral financing. The second is the pool borrowing that is there. And then the other thing that what we have seen is that, and this is relevant to the women businesses and broadly green businesses as well, which can be either women or male owned, but targeting the women customers, is that while designing these financing structures, it is also critical that the structures also cater to the financing needs of the consumers of these businesses. Because a lot of times these businesses are rural-based businesses targeting the low-income communities, and the consumers themselves do not have the capacity to afford the products or the services that these businesses may be. So also incorporating the consumer financing angle while providing the financing to these businesses. So if you are providing $100, let's say $50 go to support the operations of the business, but $50 also go towards consumer financing aspect, so that consumer financing can be extended to the consumers of these particular businesses, which in turn will assist in making the product more affordable and accessible, and then overall more customers buying the products from this business, and then overall growth and scale of the businesses. So incorporating, I think all these different elements are needed for making the financing more accessible to the women and the green businesses, I'll say. And then to the second question, in terms of the mentorship support available for the women businesses, I'll put it into the chat, because we are actually currently running a program which is particularly focused on the green businesses or renewable energy businesses across Africa. It is an online platform, as well as there is an aspect of the e-mentorship, which is available to any business across Africa, as long as they are working in the green and the renewable energy space. We already have almost like 200 plus companies have conducted almost 500 plus mentorship sessions on that. I'll put it on chat, and any other business, if they find it relevant, they can just log in and register and can make use of it. Back to you, Flaubert.
Thank you so much, Kanika. But please don't go yet. I have a question. I know I didn't like we didn't discuss this before, but since we are talking about women in entrepreneurship, and especially in green entrepreneurship, we know that you've also been working on the important issue of unpaid care as a constraint that women in general face. Do you have the impression that that is an issue that is coming in the way of women accessing finance in general?
Yes, definitely, Flaubert. And I think it's also coming into play that because of the role that the women have to play in terms of the care responsibilities, that they are not able to take their businesses to a certain scale that they become more bankable or investable in a way, and which in turn results in that the women being not able to access the finance. So it is the role of care responsibility is definitely a lot of hindrance. And like I'll just quickly touch upon, and that's why like one of the initiative that we are starting with IDRC is as well, is that how this work which is mostly involved in terms of the domestic care work that the women do, how can that domestic care work be replaced by labor-saving technologies and how those labor-saving technologies can be made accessible and affordable to the women that are using the climate finance which is available, because a lot of these labor-saving technologies in our experience are also creating a climate positive impact. So there is a possibility of accessing this climate finance and then using that climate finance to make these labor-saving technologies more accessible and affordable, which in turn will reduce the effect of the impact of the care responsibilities on the women and girls across Africa.
That's very clear. Thank you so much, Kanika. And that's actually an excellent transition to Elizabeth, because obviously we need to do a lot of advocacy work here, not only to raise awareness, but also make sure that we support women. They've been saying it over and over, but it seems like their voice are not being heard enough. So please, Elizabeth, can you tell us what are some of the best advocacy strategies that we should use to get all those messages across?
Well, for us, the experience shows that the best advocacy is by demonstrating the benefits and not really keeping talking about the problems. Okay, so we're always looking for good practices, and then say if someone has already developed good practices, you can adopt those practices. And the benefits can be also kinds. I mean, it can be economic, but can be also social benefits. As I was just listening, it came to me to mind. We just started collaborating with an organization in Germany who had a project funded by Aga Khan Foundation in Pakistan, and then the question is how you involve a community. You provide them with some funding, and then they create this community-based energy improvement of the energy use and so on. And one thing that they introduced there is the shared ownership of the technologies, the work-saving technologies, like sharing. For any family to invest in a washing machine, it's really very expensive. To have a community investing in a washing machine that is then shared by different households seems very effective. And the way this particular project or Aga Khan Foundation work is that they will give the money in order for the community to own this new this technology. And that's so it's not like it's just a grant. It really is to empower women so they become the decision makers, but they also then understand, the conditions under which any progress can be done. The other thing I would like to say about advocacy, just going back to the fact that European Commission and Horizon Europe has got this huge commitment to gender equality across all the programs, and that there are relationships on science, technology, and innovation between the EU and African Union, but also the EU and individual African countries. In the Genesis project, we analyzed these arrangements, but there are certain programs in Africa that are funded by Horizon Europe and are about energy transition or renewable energy technologies, which would be a really good basis as to look at them, because they are about innovation, look at those, connect with those and say, how can we then take a next step into the entrepreneurship and involve women in that. So not just concentrating on women as researchers and innovators, but literally women as the kind of influencers and target for this. And there is we're working with a project called LIPRE, which has got 30 projects in Africa. So it's a program that is funded on for many years. And maybe, Flaubert, we could have another webinar that we can connect with this kind of already active project. They also have to demonstrate impact, okay? So basically, we will help them to demonstrate impact, not in terms just of introducing geothermal technology or things like that, but also the impact on society in which these technologies are being introduced. Okay, so So for us, advocacy works like that. You have to concentrate very much what are the agendas already there, and how you can then embed the gender equality benefits into the agenda. So you cannot expect people to go through the learning experience of understanding gender and so on. They just don't have the time for it. You have to really understand what is it that they're really trying to achieve and show them how they can also produce the gender equality benefits. So anytime you're ready to discuss another webinar, we're here.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's highly appreciated. It's interesting that you talked about the importance of collaboration and partnership, and that's actually the question I'm going to ask to my colleague Eubans from UNFCCC. Do you have some examples or success stories of collaboration that you can share with us, especially when it comes to, leveraging Article 6 for green innovators and entrepreneurship in Africa? Eubans, are you with us? Please go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for that question, and I appreciate the insights still being shared by my co-panelists. Yes, we are fortunate to have been working with a local social enterprise called Simoshi. It is a registered entity here in Uganda, and as I said, it had implemented a project for distributing institutional improved cook stoves here in Uganda. And what it is targeting is actually the population at we call them the below the pyramid level. Those are low-income households, and it is working with the Kampala Capital City Authority to improve means of cooking from the three-stone fire, which emits a lot of gaseous emissions, but rather now an improved cook stove. So the way the model works is that you register with the organization, and then they come, they build the stove, and they do annual maintenance in case the stove has got a problem. So when they aggregate the number of these schools that have been registered under the project, they now get monitored, and eventually they are issued with carbon credits. So when these carbon credits are sold, the money that is now gotten from the sale is sunk back into those communities and now goes into looking at how can we scale up the kind of technology that we're improving, but also if this has been achieved, then they can look into, for example, looking for buying scholastic materials for the children in those schools that have been registered. Another innovative entity that we have been working with previously in terms of enhancing the understanding of how startups or how small medium enterprises can also be part of climate action is the Uganda Green Finance Accelerator, whereby they run a program, an incubation program, basically to hone the skills of these entrepreneurs, to take them through how can they write a bankable project. If they acquire the money, how can they put it better use? How can they develop innovative ideas towards achieving green financing? We have also worked with other entities like Up Energy, whereby they are distributing improved cook stoves in Uganda, Zambia, and other countries in Africa, and they also are registered project activity under the CDM, and they will be transitioning into the Paris Agreement under the Article 6.4 mechanism. There is also a project in Johannesburg whereby they have turned waste into energy. So using the landfill, the methane that is generated in these landfills to be now captured and used to generate electricity. And when I was looking at this scenario, I remembered the incident that befell Kampala. If you have watched the news recently, we had a landfill whereby quite a number of people died. And these are the kind of innovations where entrepreneurs can be looking into to harness and say, how much contribution can we make from this program? So there is quite a number, both in the energy sector, water purification, waste to mention but a few. So ideally, what we are talking about, it's not about just earning money. It's about creating an environment that is habitable for both the present and the future. So much as most of the businesses previously have not understood the essence of involving themselves in climate action, these are the kind of, talks and capacity building activities that we deliver to them to understand that, yes, you have a role to play. It is not about an industry that is emitting high, but in your small operations, because if you remember, there is that phrase of common but differentiated responsibilities and capabilities. How much contribution can you do to fit into that broader goal of emission reduction? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eubans. That's highly appreciated. With that intervention, we are coming to the end of this webinar. But if you allow me, in really 1 minute, I would like to not only thank all the participants, but also, more importantly, our panelists, Elizabeth, Nambula, Kanika, and of course, Eubans. And just to mention that, as you may have heard from the discussion, the conversation that we've just had, there is so much happening in the ecosystem. It is important to be able to know where to find information about all what is happening. And that's actually the goal of this initiative that is supported by IDRC. As you know, IDRC is there to support research and innovation with and alongside Global South experts to make sure that we can transform our societies. So this is just the beginning, and I would really like to invite you to sign up to there is a platform that was created by this initiative. If you're able to sign up so that we can keep bringing all the information at one place, that will put us in a better position to support all what is happening and think about how best to go to scale. Once again, thank you so much for your interest. Thank you for your commitment. And please, let's meet next time for the next webinar. Thank you to the UNU Vice Rectorate for in Bonn for this opportunity, and looking forward to engaging further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.